My co-workers organised a surprise baby shower for me at the office. I was genuinely moved by everyone's kindness, feeling welcomed and grateful for each gesture. But when I went to get more cups from the storage room, I overheard a conversation that made my heart freeze. It was my boss's voice, and he was preparing my dismissal. On the day of my baby shower. Days later, even while still processing everything, I still had to deliver an important project that I had completed, but along with it I handed in an envelope. When my boss opened it and read the contents, he turned pale. He almost fainted right there. And to be honest, that was the exact moment when my life began to change. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is the Linda Stories channel. I hope you enjoy this story. The sun timidly entered through the office blinds when Grace arrived, an hour before everyone else. She placed her bag on the organised desk, turned on the computer, and went to prepare coffee for the team, a ritual she had maintained for almost 5 years. At 34 years old, Grace Collins was the kind of professional any company would dream of having, meticulous, dedicated, and with a rare talent for solving complex problems. Grace adjusted the loose blouse that disguised her 6-month belly. Her first child, Leo, was already making himself known with vigorous kicks that made her smile in the middle of meetings. With a degree in environmental engineering, with a specialization in waste management, she played a crucial role in helping that medium-sized environmental consultancy, Eco Solutions, become a reference in the city. Ironically, despite being the one who signed the most important technical reports and led the most complex projects, Grace never had her work officially recognized. Service provider was her official status, even though she worked exclusively for Eco Solutions, with fixed hours and direct subordination to the manager, David Whitmore. "Good morning, Grace. How is our little engineer today?" asked Megan, entering the room with her characteristic warm smile. Younger than Grace, Megan had been hired just a year ago, but the two had developed a genuine friendship. "Restless as always," Grace replied, stroking her belly. "I spent last night finishing a report. I don't think he liked me staying up late." Megan frowned. "You need to slow down a bit. Have you thought about your baby shower?" Grace shook her head. "With so many projects going on and my mum living far away, I haven't even had time to organise anything." It was then that Megan had the idea that would change everything. Her eyes sparkled as they always did when she had a sudden inspiration. "Why don't we have your baby shower right here in the office? That way you can already get some things for the layette and then gradually buy the rest." Grace hesitated. She had never been one to mix personal life with work, but the gesture seemed so sincere. "I don't know, Megan. I don't want to bother anyone." "What discomfort? Everyone loves you here. The least we can do is celebrate this new phase of your life." After some persuasion, Grace agreed. After all, the idea of being embraced by colleagues with whom she spent more time than with her own family was comforting. Especially now that her husband, Andrew, was frequently travelling for work to complete a big project before the birth of their child. In the following weeks, Grace noticed whispers and messages being exchanged discreetly among her colleagues. Megan enthusiastically coordinated everything while keeping the details a secret. The date was set for a Friday at the end of the workday. The day of the baby shower arrived. When Grace entered the meeting room after being called for an urgent conversation, her eyes filled with tears. The austere room was transformed with blue and white balloons, a table with simple sweets, a small cake with the name Leo written in crooked icing, and a modest pile of presents wrapped in colourful paper. "Surprise!" shouted her colleagues in an awkward but sincere chorus. For a moment, Grace forgot all the sleepless nights, some piling bills, the lack of benefits, and the insecurity of not having a formal contract. Right there, at that instant, she felt part of something, truly valued. David, her boss, gave a restrained smile and handed her a small package. "From the management," he explained. It was a set of baby bodysuits. Grace thanked him. The small celebration moved forward amidst lively conversations and maternity tips from colleagues who were already mothers. At a certain moment, noticing that the disposable cups were running out, Grace offered to fetch more from the storeroom. On the way back, Passing through the corridor that led to the director's office, raised voices caught her attention. The door was ajar, and even without wanting to, Grace heard her name. "The new engineer is almost ready. I think she'll manage. The other one, with the pregnancy, she's already struggling to keep up with the pace, and soon we won't be able to count on her anymore. I can't be left short-handed now." It was David, her boss, talking to Linda, the financial department supervisor. "But Grace knows all the processes, all the clients, are you sure?" Linda questioned. "Absolute certainty. We've already talked with the management. The new engineer costs less and won't leave at the most critical moment of the project. It's a matter of strategy." Grace's heart froze. The glasses she was carrying trembled in her hands. She took a deep breath, trying to process what she had just heard. Slowly she returned to the party room, putting on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She observed her colleagues with new eyes. Who else knew? Was the baby shower a disguised farewell? The questions hammered in her head as she distributed slices of cake and thanked everyone for the gifts. When the little celebration ended and most of the colleagues had already left, Grace gathered her courage. She knocked on the door of David's office, who was organizing papers as if he was about to leave. "Can we talk for a minute?" she asked, keeping her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "Of course, Grace. Did you enjoy the surprise?" he replied without looking directly into her eyes. "I heard what you said earlier. Are you going to replace me?" The silence that followed was his answer. David swallowed hard, finally meeting her gaze. "Grace, it's not personal. We're tight. There's a new project coming in, and you're going to be absent for a while. You know you've always been hired per project. I can't afford this right now. It would be an additional cost. I'm sorry. I have to end your services." Each word fell like a brick on her shoulders. 5 years of dedication reduced to a cost. Grace felt Leo move in her belly, as if he could feel his mother's anguish. "I understand. When is my last day?" she asked with a calmness that surprised even herself. "If you can finish the plant report by Monday, that would be ideal," replied David, visibly uncomfortable. Grace nodded. She didn't shed a tear, didn't raise her voice. She simply returned to her desk, organized some personal documents, picked up the baby shower gifts and left. The plant report was practically ready on her computer. She could email it over the weekend. That night, alone at home with Andrew's absence weighing heavier than ever, Grace finally allowed the tears to fall. She wasn't crying just for the lost job, but for the broken trust, the feeling of betrayal, and the uncertain future with a baby on the way. Over the weekend, amidst anxiety attacks and tears, Grace finished the promised report, but she also did something more. She drafted a letter that wasn't an emotional outburst, but a dignified, professional, and forceful text. On Monday, she returned to the company just to hand over her visitor badge, the final irony for someone who never had a badge with her own name during 5 years. She also handed a sealed envelope to the receptionist. "Please, give this to David," she requested with a serene smile. The week that followed was silent. Grace tried to digest what had happened while organizing her finances for the coming months. Andrew, now aware of the situation and finally back, was furious, but she asked him not to interfere. This was her battle. It was on Thursday that her phone rang. A familiar number, but not saved in her contacts. "Grace, it's Linda from Eco Solutions." The voice sounded nervous. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. And you? Do you need anything?" "Well, David turned pale when he read your letter. I even offered him some water. What happened?" Grace felt a shiver run down her spine. "Is he okay?" "Yes, I think it was just the pressure that dropped. But what was in that letter?" He turned pale while reading it, and then started showing it to the management. Grace took a deep breath. The letter. In the document she expressed gratitude for the opportunity, but with serenity and precision, She listed all the projects she handled alone, the deadlines she saved, the late nights that were neither paid for nor recognized. She pointed out how, over 5 years, she was never formally hired, even though she was there every day with a badge, institutional emails, and a fixed place on the team. She also attached a legal opinion from a labour lawyer who explained point by point how it was not just a service contract, rather it was a disguised employment relationship, and further, how the abrupt end of the relationship, coincidentally after she revealed her pregnancy, could be interpreted as discrimination. But Grace didn't want revenge, and she made that clear. The letter wasn't a threat. It was a mirror. An invitation for the company to see how it treated its partners. She ended it with a simple but definitive phrase, one that apparently affected David more than Grace could have anticipated. When someone is treated as a cost, they forget that this same person helped build value, and it is this value that I take with me. It was not my intention to cause anyone physical discomfort, Linda, said Grace calmly. I just thought that after so long, I had the right to be honest. She remained in that situation genuinely believing she would be recognized, perhaps even officially hired. But the partnership she hoped for on the other side never existed. Resorting to this kind of action was never in her plans. What she did was merely a reflection of the treatment she received at a time when she needed it most. After that fateful week, something unexpected began to happen. Her phone rang, and it was an old client of Eco-Solutions. I heard about what happened. If you want to talk, I'm here. Actually, we have a project that needs someone with your expertise. Then an architect with whom Grace had collaborated on several projects. Have you ever thought about starting something on your own? I have some clients who would love to work directly with you. And so the calls and messages continued. Clients who valued her work, colleagues in the profession outraged by her dismissal, former partners offering opportunities. The network that Grace had unwittingly built over the years was mobilizing. At 28 weeks pregnant, with an unexpected dismissal and her heart still wounded, Grace made a bold decision. With the support of 2 loyal former clients and a friendly partnership with an architect, she began to set up her own environmental consultancy. She started small with an improvised desk in the living room, using the laptop she had owned for years and a printer borrowed from her brother-in-law. Andrew, initially worried about financial stability, soon became her biggest supporter, taking on more domestic responsibilities so she could focus on the new venture. It wasn't easy, and definitely not quick. There were sleepless nights not only because of the baby's kicks, but because of uncertainties that seemed greater than she could bear. Grace went through days when she questioned her decisions, fearing she had given up security for a fragile ideal. Still, there was a new feeling, subtle yet firm. A mix of freedom and dignity she had never felt before. The first contract came through a former client who, even with her departure from the consultancy, continued to respect her professionally. It was a small job but important, because it was the first one she signed with her own name. The second came through a recommendation from an old college colleague, and thus, little by little, her recently established company began to take shape. After some time away from her old company, already nearing the end of her pregnancy, Grace found herself in the small makeshift office in the corner of the living room, sending proposals, attending to clients, and managing deadlines. Nothing was guaranteed, but for the first time, she felt she was building something that truly belonged to her. On the wall, she hung the first invoice issued with her company's name. Next to it was a photo of Leo's last ultrasound, her baby, who kicked often as if he was already eager to meet the world. Grace smiled. Life has strange ways of turning the key. What seemed like an unjust end turned out to be just the beginning. It's not always worth insisting on spaces that don't recognize your value. Sometimes the answer is to start from scratch but in your own way. And that's exactly what she did. When Leo was born 2 months later, he didn't come just as the son of Grace, an environmental engineer. He came as a witness to his mother's new beginning, someone who dared to say enough at the most vulnerable moment and chose to believe in herself. He was born amidst papers, spreadsheets, contracts, but also amidst freedom, strength, and self-love. Grace not only rose again, she reinvented herself. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.